Hello and welcome to Dreamers and Creators. I am your host Anand Rao here in our IndusTV studios in Princeton, New Jersey. Dreamers and Creators is your show where we bring you exemplary achievers from various fields. And the first of the series, we are going to bring you business leaders belonging to the Indian subcontinent who have successfully set up businesses here in the United States. Today with us, we have Mr. Uday Hegde. Hello Uday, how are you?
Very nice. Thank you for having me, Anand.
Thank you. It's a pleasure that you are in our studio here, Uday. You come from a small village in Karnataka near a town called Kumta. And you were, from your background and from what I have read about you, you were not cut out for business in the traditional sense. If you look at your upbringing, you did not have a family backing. You were not born into that environment of business. But today you have become a very successful CEO. Your company, User Ready with a single R, User Ready, is a full stack data engineering and analytics organization that provides end-to-end solutions in the fields of business intelligence, and you service a variety of industries. Your clients and your partners are really like who's who of today's IT world and other organizations across businesses, in fact. So tell me this, is there something in the air of Kumta that influenced you? Because I know Kumta is a beautiful area that's close to the Arabian Sea on the west coast of Karnataka, beautiful hilly regions. It's the famous Western Ghats. So just walk us through your early days, running bare feet on the soft sands of the Kumta beach.
Well, thank you for very interesting question there. So, winding the clock back, I was born in a village called Gundibail, which is about Gundibail.
Gundibail, okay.
Gundibail, which is probably about 40 miles from Kumta, right? And then my dad is on the Ghat, upper side of the Ghat section, right? So, you have the sea level, that is these towns like Kumta, Honavar, and then above that sea level is a town called Siddhapur.
Siddhapur, yeah.
So my dad is from Taluk of Siddhapur, from a village there called Gunjgodu. Basically, we are an agriculturist family. For more than 200 years, the family has been there, still there, doing agriculture. We grow mostly, besides paddy, the main staple crop is supari, which is basically areca nut.
Areca nut, yeah.
Right? And that is a commercial crop, and that feeds the families there. That whole section is built around this crop. There are ancillary crops. Somehow I think what happened in my case, I was not destined to be a successful agriculturist. I think I consider myself as a failed agriculturist.
Okay.
Who ended up being in this business. The idea wasn't about really business. When I was very young, we were an undivided family. Almost 70 people living under the same roof.
70 people under the same roof?
Same roof.
So you must be living in a mansion to have so many people.
Houses were fairly sizable.
Okay.
At the same time, they were very much a lot of chaos, a lot of activities, right? So especially if you have a large agricultural land, you need a lot of people.
Yes.
Everything is manual labor. It was almost departmentalized. Somebody would look after, the coconut side, somebody would look after the banana side, somebody would look after the areca nut side. So you can imagine. So when I was very young, he decided to move to the nearby town, which is Siddhapur Taluk, because he had a small job there. Initially, he started working for a cooperative, which is a big movement there. We're successful ones too. He worked for this cooperative society called Thodagar's Cooperative Society, which basically translates to agriculturists cooperative society. So farmers would bring their crop, and then that's actually a marketplace. So in the modern world, we'll talk about the digital marketplace, but that was a real marketplace where farmers would bring their crop, the merchants would come, they trade. So to the extent what I saw, he was basically responsible for inventory of that, right? He was actually bookkeeper in that place, at that place.
Was that your first exposure to data?
When you think back about it, I think I learned a lot of this, what I do today, from there.
Yeah. It takes some serious knowledge management, yeah.
Right? So I was basically observing. What fascinated me though is, at that point, somebody thought about creating a marketplace for the farmers and built it with a value system that was very democratic. So the cooperative society are built where the owners of that society are basically the farmers or the members. It's like credit union concept here. So members run, members owned organization. And my grandfather, who was a freedom fighter also, was one of the directors of that society also. So there was a lot of discussion of politics. There's a lot of discussion about how these things are run within the house. So that always fascinated me. So building institution is what really fascinated me more than anything else.
So is there anybody else among your siblings or your cousins who became data managers or any kind of businessmen with numbers involved?
Not necessarily the same craft, but what was interesting is my own sister, we are one sibling, I have a sister, she ended up being an entrepreneur also.
Oh, wonderful, yeah.
And neither one talked about it anywhere in our early childhood, that both of us would eventually end up building our own businesses. She lives in Bangalore, but yeah, that was an interesting coincidence.
That's incredible. You know, for those of our viewers who are not from that area, I should tell you that us growing up in Bangalore, going to these places like Siddhapura, Honnavara, Kumta, this was like a huge vacation for us. You know, earlier our parents used to take us on overnight buses from Bangalore, go there, enjoy this beautiful, they would be booked in an estate, and then we go to the beaches and the gardens. And then when we grew up, we would be on our motorcycles. That would be a great road trip for us. We would ride all night and, you know, just watching the sunrise over the Charmudi Ghats or the Agumbe Ghats. That would be incredible. These are places endowed with amazing nature's bounty and beauty, and the people also. You know, it's strange that we are having this conversation now, because we love just meeting the people and interacting with the locals, because there's a huge difference between how people from those parts of Karnataka interact with, when you compare them with the other parts of Karnataka. They're extremely polite and soft-spoken people, and looks like that quality has not left you even after all these years of moving to the US and being
Anand,
here.
I'll tell you something very interesting. You said a good observation too. I have thought about it later. Basically, there was no real desire to get out of that system. Even today, I think a lot of times, why did I leave that system? Why? Because that system there, you also observed it, I think, they're self-sustained.
Absolutely, yeah.
They live in a very self-sustained environment. Now, to think about it, right? A family of 70 people, where I grew up, is also same as family of, a business of 70 people. Imagine, right? You have to pay salaries, you have to take care of them, you have to feed them, you have to do everything. So the head of the family, which was my grandfather, had to really manage these circumstances and situations, right? There's always this conflict resolution, that is that. But most importantly, the money that is needed to run the family was coming from the self-sustained environment they were in. So we would never almost buy anything from the market. We had everything coming within. So it passed on to generations. So growing up, it was really not even a consideration to leave, because the family itself took care of you. So you don't need a job. Just learn the craft
Yes.
of the family. and then just you work within the family setup. So you just keep going. That is how they have lived hundreds of years, and it always amazes me. Somebody hundreds of years ago thought through that, okay, we are going to grow this crop, we are going to do it this way, this is how it's going to be set up. Except electricity, maybe later when it came, otherwise they were not really buying anything otherwise. It's sort of an isolated environment. When I see, sometimes I correlate these things, when I see Amish in Lancaster, I feel like, oh wow, this is very similar, conceptually.
No, it's very interesting. I was reading somewhere in the rainforests of Brazil, there are these tribes that have been there for hundreds and hundreds of years. Nobody knows how long they've been there. And they have a certain set of expertise that's transferred from generations to generations to generations. And so the World Knowledge Management Forum invited one of those chiefs from one of those tribes to come and share how they do it. And it's all just handed down verbally from generation to generation. And it's a huge amount of knowledge gathered over the generations that's kind of sustaining, how to sustain the rainforests. And they have some of the best solutions for environment. So now that's great evidence to show that the rainforest, their system is still working, though they live off the forest and their population is increasing as well. But they know very well, they have the knowledge to kind of run those rainforests. So similarly, you have this amazing knowledge base that nurtured you initially, which maybe we'll only realize in hindsight. So let's see what you did with that. So User Ready you started User Ready in 2011, right? With your partner Lalit, your co-founder Lalit. And then since then, in 2018, you were the Tableau Partner Advisory Council member. In 2017, you became the System Integrator of the Year, awarded by Tableau. And 2016, you were the Service Partner of the Year for Tableau again. And then in 2015, you were Inc. 5000's fastest growing company in the US. And in 2015 again, you were named by Red Herring as one of the top 100 in North America. Those are some pretty impressive numbers, considering that you are a system integrator for Tableau, and over the years you have acquired a lot more partnerships. But then you work with some very big names like Amazon, and I have a whole list of you name it: JP Morgan, HSBC, and TVS, Prudential, Credit Suisse. So it's amazing. So tell me something. How did you decide that you need to be an entrepreneur? Because you're in this space which is fiercely competitive, and it must have taken something from inside you to say that, yes, this is the line I want to choose. You could have done a lot of things, because let's look at your career here. You started as a software engineer, right? You were in Credit Suisse, and you went to Harvard for the owner and president management program. And then you worked in Hewlett Packard for many years. So why data and business intelligence as a chosen line of enterprise for you?
It's a very loaded question. I'll try to dissect it in parts. First of all, as you emerge from your early childhood and get into the education, it was not obvious to me at that point that I wanted to be an entrepreneur or anything like that. But when you decide to come out of your ecosystem that I grew up in, now you have to really fight for everything, right? So I kind of walked away from the roots, from a standpoint. I think it really starts from where you really start. So in my case, when my dad moved from the village to the town, I think the migration started, right?
Correct.
So the migration would not have happened. Later, when I graduated, passed my 12th grade, right, decided to pursue engineering, I chose Mysore. The school that I went to is called National Institute of Engineering, one of the top engineering schools in the state of Karnataka. And that was the first probably big city that I ever saw. That was Mysore, right? I was there for 4 years. A beautiful city. Absolutely. A beautiful place to be.
Doesn't throw a shade on New York. Yeah.
Right? And it was an amazing environment to really acclimatize yourself to the big world, right? At that point, once I graduated in industrial production engineering. I ended up with my first job as a graduate engineering trainee with Bharat Earthmovers Limited, BEML.
BEML.
BEML was an interesting times for me particularly. I don't know if it happens to many people. When I actually started working in a factory, that I realized I've chosen a wrong lane to advance my career and life. So at that point, the restlessness comes within. Now, if you ask me, why is BEML a bad company? Absolutely not. In fact, back then, even today, one of the best employers who are very stable, who have always grown, an amazing place to work for. In fact, people would always look at me when I said, I got bored there, something is wrong with me. And they're right. Because when I think back in those days, you could live in Bangalore working for BEML with literally 1,500 rupees a month.
So what year was this?
99.
99, okay.
Right?
Yeah, 1,500 was a handsome amount.
And they would actually feed you.
Yeah.
They would give you 3 meals a day. Yeah. And you are there. And this whole system, you have bus picking you up and dropping you. Amazing work-life balance. You cannot beat that. In Indian, I think government-run organizations like BEML is amazing.
Yes.
But for me, I realized as soon as I graduated, I retired. That's it. Your life stops. You're done. You just stay there for the next 40 years. You got your plots, sites, money, everything is ready. Now, what else you have to do in life?
Settling down, they call it, right?
Exactly. But that part really bothered me. So I started looking out. What do I do now? Do I pursue management career? Do I pursue something else? So that's when I came across this institute. Now it's known as famously IIITB.
Indian Institute of Technology.
International Institute of Information Technology, as it is called now. When they started, it was Indian Institute of Information Technology.
Okay.
One of its kind. And that was the exact program that I needed to get into the course correction path. Right? So you already invested 4 years of undergrad in doing something that you probably don't enjoy much. Now you need to course correct yourself. That lesson is very important. It is very common to fail for an entrepreneur or in general in life. But what I did, I always remind myself of this, is failure is not a setback. It's a feedback. There's a feedback there that you need to take and improve yourself. Eventually, one of the core values of my business is called continuous improvement. It comes from there. Keep reminding yourself that in the journey of continuous improvement, failures are inevitable and imminent. Just be comfortable with it. If it's going to fail, now what are you going to do with that feedback? Going back to the point, when we think about the course correction, so my course correction happened by applying to IIIT Bangalore. I went to their initial program, and that's where I come across Professor Sadagopan, who's visionary in my view. I've interacted with him subsequently quite a bit, and who left career in United States to come back to India, taught at IITs, IIMs. His dream was to build an educational institution of one of its kind. And now think about it. India, from the independence through to year 2000, IITs were ruling the roost when it comes to engineering. When you think about engineering in India, you think about IIT, right? Synonymous.
I think it still is, isn't it?
If you look at ranking from recent rankings, IIIT has beat them.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In that space. All it took was 20 years to this great man to conquer something that nobody thought is possible. So my fortune was that I ran into Sadagopan at that point. That is the first time I realized, oh, here is an entrepreneur who in all sense is an academician, is a professor, is a teacher. How is he an entrepreneur? He doesn't fall into any of the categories that we talk about. But if you see carefully, he built one of the most profitable, financially speaking, because I am on the advisory members board also, so I know it, but also, more importantly, educationally eminent and challenging the status quo as was unimaginable, right? Even today. So he delivered that. So for me, I think the first spark started there. He always tells institution building is an act of faith. For me, it's a very profound statement. So what is this act of faith is really soul searching. If you don't have the faith, then you cannot build an institution. Now relating back to my roots. So there was a person behind the cooperative society that happened. There was a person with a belief or taking an act of faith that this is going to work. So that resonated through my journey. I always think anything you do is an act of faith. You have to really make a decision as an individual at that point. So if you do not believe in it, then it won't work eventually. So for me, the journey started there at that point when I think got into IIIT Bangalore. I'm not saying everybody should be an entrepreneur or it's a big thing. It is actually nothing fancy, honestly. I think media sometimes glorifies this journey a lot more than it is supposed to be. For me, it's just anything else. It's a choice that one has to make. Once you make a choice, you have to live with the consequences.
If you were to, let's say, by a stroke of serendipity or whatever, you go back to working for somebody, do you think that you would make a better executive working for somebody else, or do you think you're better off working for yourself?
It's a very good question again. I must say a little bit loaded also. There's a point there which is very interesting. So most of the time when I read about entrepreneurs, they always say that I wanted to work for myself as a theme, right? That is most of the time what people say that, or sometimes people say, oh, I wanted to quit 9 to 5, somehow correlated to the fact that 9 to 5 means a boring job. Honestly, it did not happen in my case. I was very successful in corporate. I've been a workaholic by nature. So the jobs where I worked in corporate, I did 2 major stints, one with Hewlett Packard, another with Credit Suisse. Both were very successful. I wasn't bored. I wasn't tired. It was just that I wanted to change. It's a choice that I had to make. So now coming to your question particularly, there is no such thing as working for yourself. Honestly, I don't work for myself. I work for my direct employees. So think about this. I believe in reverse pyramid, what is basically also correlated to servant leadership. In a servant leadership principle, what happens is the boss is a servant of their subordinates, of his subordinates or her subordinate. So I work for my people in the organization. So I am their servant. So I'm not really working for myself.
That's very interesting. So where do your clients fit into the picture? Because I was expecting you to say I work for my clients, but it's surprising you tell me that you actually are a slave to your employees.
So good question. I think there is again notion of client is everything. Client is very important. They help you pay your bills, right? They are the reason why you exist. But the beautiful thing is, if you focus on building a product or a brand, you can acquire clients. So to that extent, I'm not trying to trivialize, but at the same time, I'm telling all the entrepreneurs or fellow people is that don't focus on clients. Focus on the product the value, clients happen.
That's very well said. That's brilliant. I totally see that. Building a good product, you will automatically get clients. So make yourself worthy enough of attention. Now, don't go seeking for attention. That's sums it up. That's beautiful. Now, so you're an authority on business intelligence. From what I gather, I did a little bit of reading on your work and what you have done, and even in your time scale,
we started with BI as a
started with BI, and you're going stronger with it. There hasn't been too many course corrections there. If any, it's only to kind of make the offering better. So now tell me, from business intelligence in organizations, it's been around for a while, both business intelligence and competitive intelligence there, but it's undergoing a lot of changes, systemic changes, but organizations are trying hard to catch up. And from what I understand, it appears to be more of a people challenge than technology challenge, because there are technologists like you who can create more technologies, but are people ready yet? What are the cultural shifts that you see happening on a daily basis from the time, let's take about some point in history to some point in the future? What are the cultural shifts you see?
So I will share with you something which I strongly believe in, first of all. So business intelligence, as user ready's entry point into the world of business, was just an happenstance. So the choice was made to be in the BI space because fill in the blanks, right? So what happens is, an entrepreneur, when you decide to launch your business, you have to make a choice of, okay, what is this business going to be about? Winding the clock back to when we started a decade ago, we were looking for a nice launch pad to launch the company and be somebody in that space. And the way I approach business in sometimes or many times is actually somewhat academic in nature. I look at principles, I look at historical evidences, I look at information, I search for that information that this is correct or not. Why do I do that? Is because I look for mitigating risks, right? So what happened here in our case is, in 2010, it was the perfect time to launch a business in the data analytics space as a unique offering, right? Why did that happen? If you look at, as a computer science student, if you look at the history of computer science, in 60s, post semiconductor invention, we started building these big computers. The computers were basically of the size of this building that we are sitting in. Yeah. And essentially what happened is, this where with a lot of intelligence and research, we started shrinking that building. How much have we shrunk that building today? It's that phone you are holding in your hand. That is the building from 60s, right?
Yeah.
So we used to use that building to compute, put processors in it, to put memory in it. So what happened here is that if you track the history, the building became smaller in 70s and 80s. We called it personal computers, right? Then we took a wire, network cable basically, connected them and called it internet. It took another 10 years for us, right? That was 90s. Wind the clock forward. So what are we trying to do? By shrinking, we could shrink more and more. Another 10 years later, we shrank it to the size of a mobile phone, right? But luckily, we didn't have to carry the wire because we had already replaced the wire with wireless. By then, you're already in 2000s. So why did we do all this? What happened? With that internet, one advantage that came, which was, now you could distribute the workload that the buildings from 70s did. When you distribute the workload, what happens is you're able to scale it faster and better, rather. That's where the cloud came into picture. The cloud was about, Amazon and today Microsoft and Google deciding that we'll put all the money to take that computing for you. We'll do that processing for you and you pay me a fee. Look, of course, everybody likes it. If your core business is not computer science or anything to do with technology, why would you want to run buildings of data centers and everything, the cloud happened. By then, that was 2010. Now, here I am, who's an wannabe entrepreneur, business owner, looking at, okay, what do I do? I saw this mix. There was a perfect gap. The gap was, so everybody is holding mobile phone. Everybody is trying to push things to cloud. So why are they doing it? Ask the same question again, right? So they're doing it because they're trying to make sense of the information that is generated. So why do you want to make sense out of the information? Why is it important for you as a businessman? Any company that is out in the business is because they want to do better, they want to be more productive, they want to make more money, more profit. So it's a basic covenants of any business. So what is really going to give you the competitive advantage at that point is your data. So data is your, what they call it's oil of the century, but essentially what it is data will bring you the differentiator and competitive advantage. If only you know. If only you know your employees are not joining you because fill in the blank, you can solve it. Right? Any business can solve any problem only when they know it. Figuring out requires looking at data. Then there are two principles in the data. Analytics is the fundamental idea, but analytics can be broken down into two areas. Descriptive analytics, where you explain what happened. Other one is predictive prescriptive analytics. Right? In a very layman term, explaining what happened is business intelligence. If you are a corporate executive, you want to know what happened so that you can make better decisions. You have the experience, you have the human intelligence to make the decision, but somebody has to give you that information, what happened, right? That's where business intelligence comes in. So when we decided to launch User Ready, we said that's our space. There is nobody there. It's a clean white space. There are tools, like you said earlier. BI has been around, but those tools were all broken. They were not friendly, they were not useful. As a decision maker, you were still using your pen and paper. So that was the launchpad.
So that brings to the second part of my question. While we are looking at incorporating business intelligence methodologies into the new organizational development programs, what are the cultural shifts you expect to happen in the employees? Because I think that would be quite a challenge for existing employees who are used to one way of working, right? They're stuck in
You're
their
absolutely
ways.
Right.
So getting them to adopt something else.
You're absolutely right. It was really looking at things upside down or in a reverse way, right? Up until then, you had these big system integrators, Infosys, TCS, Cognizant, whatnot, amazing companies. They're already dominating your space. All my customers, we fight with them. We had to literally fight against them, right? These are, the David and Goliath story, right? Where you are trying to figure out how do you really fight them? How do you find people who will approach the reverse way, right? One is hiring your talent who can actually deliver. The other one is sellers who can sell and communicate to the market, right? Product managers who can create products for you, so on and so forth. So we started training our people that, look, if you are in the same room as another system integrator, one of yours are in the wrong room, figure it out. Who's in the wrong room, right? So it is actually a way of coaching your people. When you think about cultural transformation, Anand, there is a very fundamental concept or cultural shift, if you will, is that you have to really invest within. We created User Ready University, where there is a boot camp of 3 months where you go through a rigorous coaching, and we wanted our people to be able to directly communicate with the decision makers, unlike the previous system where there were layers of managers or messengers. So investing in
I like it, messengers, not managers.
Exactly. Right? They had this layer of messengers. We had to fight it. So we really invested in training all these areas specifically. And if you look at today, in our space, if you have our name on your resume, you probably may not even be interviewed, because many of our employees author books in that subject area. We self-publish books. We are not a publisher, but we self-publish books. We figured out how to do that. We figured out so many things that did not exist before in our journey. Every step was a evolution from the previous stage against beating the competition.
That's amazing. That's so you are an expert yourself, and you crave knowledge. That I can see. You speak about knowledge so much, and you crave education is very important for you, and education on the work is very important for you as well. You learn as you go. I have to kind of ask this question more from my experience. And when you work in different organizational settings and you see mediocre managers, right, and they hire more mediocre assistants in the process. So more messengers, in your word, become more messengers. They have more messengers. So in due course, it becomes an organization of mediocres.
Absolutely.
Right. So I'm pretty sure you believe in the paradigm that, hire somebody who's smarter than me to kind of make the organization smarter.
So I will break it down in a simple way. In my view, is that first of all, you have to have a very clear value system for a business. Okay. In our business, we have 5 core values. They are customer centricity, community, continuous improvement, humility, and integrity. These are the 5 values. Notice that it has nothing to do with profit. It has nothing to do with technology. You could be whoever. We have hired people who are ex-Marines and trained them to this, as long as there's a value match, right? We can hire from any walk of the life. However, going back to the managers being mediocre, it happens when you don't invest in them. Most organizations invest heavily in their boot camp or that fresh training, but they miss the managers. There's somehow a myth that as they grow up in their career, automatically they become managers. They don't. Actually, they don't, including me. I had to learn how to build business. So that's why I went to HBS. I had to learn the principles, how to do it the right way, right?
Yes, you did the owner president management program at Harvard Business School.
Exactly.
So so by then you were already an established organization, and then you went back to school. Can you tell us how it changed your thinking and how it influenced your thinking? Because usually we hear about executive programs. Executives always go to business school, and many of them don't really come back changed. How did that change you?
I would say for business owners, this program, HBS OPM, is one of its kind. I did a lot of research. Like you said earlier, I'm absolutely a knowledge hawk. I am an information geek. I just want information, right? So as an entrepreneur, one has to recognize that they are not ready for every level of the organization automatically. I think it's very simple. I believe in analogy. Sometimes I tell you, you learn how to fly a helicopter. Can you automatically fly a Cessna? No. You need to again learn. Okay, you fly Cessna. No. Can you automatically take a Boeing?
Yes, 747. Yeah.
Again. So same thing goes to doctors, right? As a profession. You cannot do one surgery and then figure out how to do other one automatically. Yeah. But somehow in the business, people believe that you can. And why is it? I don't understand. So going back to my case, so User Radio was a good launch, successful. We reached a level of height. So I was not satisfied with my own performance. I was very self-critical. I am still very self-critical, and I was thinking about how could we make this better. That's when I researched about it, and I ran into this program, OPM, Owner President Management, which is essentially a packaged program for business owners to know everything, the 360 degree of your business world. What is it, right? So that kind of a packaged education always helps. I don't have to say much about Harvard professors. They're amazing, and they do their part. The institute does its part. As a student, if I can carry my humility to learn, it gives you a lot. For me, just to give you an example, one reference point I would say. Before me going there, our Glassdoor ranking. Glassdoor is actually one of the tools that gives you employee feedback, right? Was pretty low. I was not happy with it. It was okay at some point. It fell, and we were like trying to figure out. There's a lot of nervousness about it. We were wondering what should we do. That point, coincidentally, around that time frame, I went to HPS and came back. Within a year, our ranking, employee score went from 2.7 to 4.5 out of 5. I went back and told my professor, David Campbell, Professor, I just noticed this. How did this happen? So he was very intrigued by that concept also, because some of the fundamentals they teach, you have to implement it the right way within your organization. You know your organization the best. So you are the bridge to that knowledge, to implementation. But I think you already benefited a lot, I think. Personally, I benefited a lot, obviously. So it was an amazing program that I'm proud to have been part of, actually.
It's fantastic, to hear that the change that was already there. That's something very exciting, and I think every leader should kind of invest in making themselves better leaders. Another question I had while you were talking about how tools are becoming outdated fast is there was this content continuum in practice since 1970. That was the data, information, knowledge, wisdom, the progress of content. Do you think that is still valid? Do you think data, or have you automated the process? How data converts to information, and information turns to knowledge, and knowledge eventually becomes wisdom in the organization. So, do you think what you are offering has become as automates the whole process?
We have, in that value chain, we have constantly looked at to improve the miles. However, there is always the principle of last mile problem, right? The last mile problem of data value chain is a human.
Yeah, the human touch.
So, that is the most difficult and time-consuming transformation. So, we have invested a lot in researching about a concept called community intelligence. Mm-hmm. Community intelligence is, or also known as collective intelligence, is to figure out how do you really harness your organization's collective intelligence to your benefit, to the organization's benefit. But that is the hardest problem to crack. The rest is all a lot more simpler and easier than probably you think.
Very interesting you mentioned that, because just 2 days ago I was listening to this podcast. I am not quite sure if it's the McKinsey podcast or the HBS podcast. There was this comparison made. Now, imagine if our regular markets work like how the stock market works, right? So you walk into a mall and then you have somebody from a corner, let's say McDonald's, shouting, "Get this burger now! The price will go up in 10 minutes. Get this burger now!" And then you have Nordstrom saying, "Get this suit now. The price is going up in 2 minutes." So everybody is yelling over each other. That's how the stock market works. So you have to have the spur of the moment purchasing and selling. But in reality, it's already happening. That is, online, people have it on their phones. They see, okay, this guy is selling this shoe at $10, that guy is selling at $8. So that's already happening, but quietly, so no one is raising their voice. So, but what they're lacking is the human touch, as in, once they take this to this automated level, there's no human touch. Nobody wants to now go feel and look and buy it. And do you think that's the human touch you were talking about in the last mile connectivity?
So yes and no. Yes, in the sense, when you look at consumers, right? Broad-based consumer market, that's where I think every effort has gone in to trying to read the mind, trying to influence the mind, right? trying to cajole mind and trying to sell something to them. That is one particular angle where you're diffusing different emotional reactions: fear, anger, frustration, success, happiness, you name it. So that is emotional intelligence side of it, right? So that is one side of it. But the other side of it is actually, I'm talking about, that usually focuses on, is actually within. So you are a bank, or you could be an insurance company. You have massive environment or infrastructure that you have built over the course of, you have been leading your business for the last 30, 40, 50, 100 years, right? But is that sustainable, right? You will have to think about what will happen to my business 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. Am I ready to take on? You will be surprised that 20 years from now, the banks that we are going to deal with is probably not going to be any of these big names that you know already, unless they change it. They're aware too. They're very aware. That's why the problem is, and we are talking about that. And they are also very well aware that what is stopping them from becoming that next generation is their own people, own existing systems. Nobody else. It's not a competitor. It's nobody else. So, but the competitors are always attacking the market from their perspective. But the rate of change that is happening before, Anand, is very different from back in the days to now. Before internet, the rate of change was much, much slower when our predecessor companies happened, even in our own case. But the rate of change right now is way beyond anyone has experienced before. So that cognizance of that, okay, rate of change is so high, how do I really run this business? 2 days ago, Jack Dorsey, Twitter CEO, said hyperinflation, which is something I have been coaching my organization already. The hyperinflation is real. It influences, it accelerates the rate of change around you, which means as a business, you need to really change or adapt to that new rate of change, which is very, very hard.
Yeah, rate of change you mentioned, but so if we look at a majority of the large American organizations, the legacy organizations, are having some kind of a change management program running, and many of them have already failed.
More than 80% fails.
I can name out of my top of my head at least 8 big American organizations who failed to make that change, even after millions and even billions of dollars of investment into new technologies over the last 8 to 10 years. Do you think that's going to change, or are companies still going to keep putting more and more into that, because there is this mindless technology buying spree people go on to without actually making that change readiness program to work from within?
Actually, if the question is, do I think? I absolutely think yes, but there is a big problem. It requires 2 things. What does rate of change do to an organization is, it endangers psychological safety of incumbent people, right? So your existing inside people won't like it. They are fearful of this rate of change disrupting their lives, right? Could be job loss, it could be title loss, it could be anything, but that fear hurts psychological safety of the team collectively, right? So that is a big problem. It is not easy to navigate. The second one is leaders that they are working for, those people are working for, have to demonstrate extreme empathy. It is very hard to find empathetic leaders. The combination of the need there of ensuring psychological safety of the people and having to navigate that, you needing empathetic leaders, is what differentiates the ones who will and ones who can't or who won't. And it is imminent. It is there. Everybody talks about, a lot of case studies in the history about Blockbuster, the company versus Netflix. When you read those things, you will realize one thing. It wasn't that the Blockbuster corporate or executives were any less intelligent. It is just that there was some level of inertia to respond to the change, which might have come from the same 2 factors. psychological safety, and empathy. So when you have a Netflix, a younger organization that's coming in with newer set of leaders, newer thinking, modern thinking people, suddenly they didn't have the baggage.
Yeah.
So that is what happens most of the time, is my experience.
So without a doubt, we can say User Ready is a learning organization, learning and an evolving organization. As much as it is a profitable organization that does believe in stakeholder capitalism, but at the same time, it lays more emphasis on empathetic capitalism.
Absolutely.
From what your words.
Absolutely.
So Uday, those are some fascinating insights that you threw of your journey to the C-suite until now. But now, tell me, where do you go from here? What's your professional goals, and what are your goals for your organization? And I'll follow that up with another question again. Has that aligned with your personal goals?
Another very good loaded question also. There are two parts actually. So the first part you're asking is, what is next? Where do you take this? I think fundamentally, when you think about how we grew, the initial phase is all about establishing your business, launching it, becoming a brand, acquiring customers, giving confidence to the community that you are going to be there. You're here to stay, right? Once you reach that milestone, to scale the business to the next level, for us, an interesting internal goal was $100 million revenue. I think it's just a ball in the air as a number that we threw up there. And operating at that revenue requires a lot of internal structural changes. That is one thing. The second thing is you need to carry more products to the market, right? So that brings in another perspective, which is different expansion areas. Broadly, we look at that as an expansion and exploration. Okay, so the data value chain for us is a straight expansion areas for us. We have a lot of areas to cover there, right? The space is still very young. For the vertical markets, if you talk about financial industry, cloud is new. They're still in their journey to really adopt cloud, unlike many other markets. So that is that. There's a lot of greenfield. Exploration is actually more interesting because fundamentally the existing incumbent financial institutions are facing a huge threat from what is now very popularly known as cryptocurrencies, right? You cannot exist, I think, in the financial services market if you don't have a game plan for how to tackle this. So everybody has their own version. I think today, thanks to the media and the awareness, everybody knows about cryptocurrencies. But I think what it means to the bank is something that is lesser understood, right? So in our journey, I think that's a huge opportunity to play in the realm of blockchain, to play in the realm of crypto, and how that impacts our industry vertical. So that's a huge exploration area for us. There's an expansion, which is very linear, and non-linear, which is exploration in the crypto space.
So essentially, you're like if I have to draw a rough metaphor, you're like the amplifier in the sound industry, right? So to create bigger and better speakers, you need stronger amplifiers. So that's what you do. Now from a personal standpoint, as your personal professional goals, where do you see yourself?
So for me, this is just the first decade of my entrepreneurial journey, if you will. So before getting into that, there was a lot of mental preparation needed. So as an individual, I was very conscious about planning from early days, very risk-averse mindset, a very calculative mindset from everything I used to calculate. Those principles have evolved now as a 500 people organization soon to be. Now I feel responsible for not my own family, but 500 families that are part of the company, right? So anything that happens around them also becomes somewhere my responsibility. So my decision making has to be a lot more precise, lot more measured, is how I think about it. Secondly, I think personally I'm very satisfied. Had you met me 10 years ago, probably you will find a lot more restless individual. And in fact, if I had not founded UseReady and built a business, I probably would go into depression.
Wow.
So in a way, for me, this, while it's seemingly risky, stayed me away from depression because this was very exciting challenge. So I'm actually looking forward to 10 more years. And I feel we are just getting started. I think as a space, as an entrepreneur, I feel a lot more comfortable that I can run this for many more years. So
it's very interesting because we both come from the same part of the world, from the same state. So this is more out of from my observation that people from Karnataka and like many other states in India are risk averse. You don't see too many entrepreneurs. Most people are quite happy doing their 9-to-5 job and being able to kind of leave their job behind when they go home to work from work. So what advice do you have for youngsters who don't have that family background of entrepreneurship? There's no temper, so-called entrepreneurship temper running in the family or in their instincts. But still, what kind of a spark do you think they need to look for in themselves to be able to pursue that journey?
That's absolutely right. So we are more risk averse. I think also that is partly because of lack of education. When I say education, not academic education, more of a business education or financial education, right?
Good, yeah.
So we were told that if you invested in a company, you're likely to lose money, or if you decide to take a loan, it's a problem. But that is true. That is true because the intent behind it is really good intent. However, eventually I realized a principle that is called affordable loss. The word itself came from my good friend Rahul Mohandas, but he calls it affordable loss. But that is, the principle is this: you have to decide when you are going in this direction, in this journey, what is the amount of money that you are willing to lose, which will not have catastrophic impact on you. So this is very commonplace in the, I would say, middle-aged entrepreneurs than early-age entrepreneurs. If you look at someone who's in their late teens or early 20s, their requirement is a lot simpler of life and situationally. We have signed up for a lot more things. We are likely to have we are married and have children and have mortgage, and our amount that we need to really commit for it keeps increasing. However, I think that if you look at the percentage of entrepreneurs, middle-aged entrepreneurs are more likely to succeed because we tend to plan for these areas. Going back to the Karnataka or other states, I think it's just a lack of business knowledge. For me, I realize this right today. My children have access to a father that can answer most of these areas on a breakfast table. Mm-hmm. How many starting entrepreneurs have that luxury of having a dad who solves some of the complex business problems over a breakfast? I think that value of that is missing, which makes them scared about.
That makes a lot of sense. In fact, that explains why a lot of the families work together in business and they succeed well, because it runs in their the planning happens at the business the breakfast table. Right. They don't have to go to business school. Their early education has started at the breakfast table already. That's great. So, one question, Uday, what is it that about you that we can't find on Google? What do you do for fun?
If you think about how do I keep myself engaged outside of the business?
Yeah.
So hobbies keep evolving. I think I like to explore and experiment many times in a way. Coming from a very small place, highly restricted place in many ways, not too many opportunities. So everything the world offered was an exploration, right? So from that standpoint, I think I keep changing my hobbies. I think, but most of the time I'm very comfortable I love to spend time reading and writing sometimes. Watching movies is always there. I'm always drawn to the industry, and I'm impressed by the way creators like yourself operate, and the realm of creativity is very interesting. Besides that, also, trying to pick a new game, trying to learn a new language, that is always on. So,
what are you reading right now?
In terms of, I'll have to look up the exact books, but I will.
What's your favorite book anyway?
So, a lot of books I read are non-fiction, and any book that teaches a new information, not entertainment, but I read for information. That is interesting for me. So when I read, Satya Nadella's book, or when I read any book that talks about fundamentally how people operate, how people transform, that is interesting to me, right? So I read from that perspective. I keep picking up books. A lot of books I read are really like casual, but they are all around the topic of improvement, continuous improvement.
That's interesting. So can you tell us a little about your family?
Yes. So my wife, she's an engineer. I think in our house, she's the real engineer. So
you're the fake one?
At least she believes that. Okay. And fundamentally, she's electronics engineer, but right now she works for a very large investment bank in Manhattan, and a hardcore geek. So both of us have very much an academic bent to our approach. 2 children, one in high school, one in 3rd grade. We have a very simple routine. Because both of us in a way are busy working, we keep our weekends pretty easygoing. So that's how we are.
That's exciting. That's as building something and creating something, and then sustaining it for a long period of time, and then becoming very successful in it. That's what Dreamers and Creators is all about, and you have done a fabulous job with whatever you set out to do. And then it was an honor sitting here and talking to you, and I would love to keep this going, but then we have to put a stop somewhere. And we definitely look forward to your future growth and accomplishments, and we are eager to see where User Ready would go. And thank you very much for joining us. It was my privilege.
My pleasure.
Talking to you.
Thank you for having me today.
Absolutely. Thank you. So as you can see, Dreamers and Creators is all about bringing very interesting people from various walks of life. But the first of the series will focus on CEOs of Indian origin or the South Asian origin who have successfully set up organizations here in the United States and are doing a great job of it. So to learn more about their journey to the C-suite, we are going to bring you more such business leaders. And so thank you very much for watching, and we will see you soon.